A storm lashes the windows of a private estate on the outskirts of Geneva. Inside, a dozen men and women, some with names you'd never recognize, others whose signatures have moved entire markets, sit around a table set with crystal glasses and silent cell phones. There are no cameras, no press, no official records. Yet, in the next hour, a single decision made in this room will send shockwaves through the world's financial system. A currency will rise, a government will fall, and millions of people will feel the effects without ever knowing why. Most people believe the world is run by presidents, parliaments, and public institutions. But what if the real power lies elsewhere? What if, behind every economic boom and bust, every sudden market crash, every mysterious bailout, there are secret clubs, networks of billionaires, bankers, and dynastic families pulling the strings? What if the world's money is not just managed, but controlled by a handful of people you've never heard of, operating in the shadows, bound by loyalty, secrecy, and a code older than any constitution? Tonight, we pull back the velvet curtain. We'll reveal the hidden history of the world's most exclusive financial clubs, from the clandestine gatherings of the Bilderberg Group to the ancient halls of Venetian banking guilds, from the modern power brokers of Davos to the secretive family offices that quietly own entire industries. You'll discover how these clubs shape elections, topple governments, and decide which nations rise and which fall. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the untold story of the real rulers of global finance. You're about to see a world you were never meant to see. A world where money is power, and power is absolute. Welcome to the secret billionaire clubs that control the world's money. To understand how these secret billionaire clubs came to rule the world's money, we need to step back and see the forces that shaped our financial reality. For centuries, wealth was visible: castles, gold coins, land deeds, and royal crowns. Power was inherited, and the world's richest families flaunted their fortunes in palaces and parades. But as the world industrialized, money became more abstract, more mobile, and infinitely more powerful. The rise of global banking, the birth of stock markets, and the explosion of international trade created a new kind of wealth, one that could cross borders in seconds, one that could be hidden, multiplied, or erased with a single keystroke. By the early 20th century, the old empires were crumbling, and a new elite was emerging. These were not kings or queens, but bankers, industrialists, and financiers, men like J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and the Warburgs. They understood that true power was not in owning land, but in controlling the flow of money itself. They built networks, private clubs, discreet societies, and exclusive gatherings where the world's financial future was quietly decided over cigars and cognac. Today, these networks are more powerful than ever. The world's top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 99% combined. Trillions of dollars move through offshore accounts, shell companies, and private trusts, invisible to governments and tax collectors. Central banks, sovereign wealth funds, and multinational corporations are all connected by a web of personal relationships, secret meetings, and unspoken agreements. The stakes are enormous. A single decision in one of these rooms can trigger a global recession, spark a currency crisis, or rescue a failing nation. For you, the viewer, this story matters because it explains why the world feels so unpredictable, why fortunes are made and lost overnight, and why the rules of the game always seem to favor the same tiny group. This is not just about money, it's about who gets to write the rules, who gets to break them, and who pays the price when things go wrong. The secret billionaire clubs are not just shaping the world's economy, they're shaping your future. Meet the architects of the invisible empire. These are not the faces you see on magazine covers or the names trending on social media. Instead, they are the heirs of old money, the founders of new fortunes, and the gatekeepers of generational wealth. Some are born into dynasties, families like the Rothschilds, whose banking legacy stretches back to the 18th century, or the Agnellis of Italy, who quietly control vast swathes of European industry. Others are self-made, like the tech billionaires who now sit at the same tables as old-world aristocrats. Their fortunes built not on land or oil, but on code and data. But what unites them is not just wealth, it's access. Access to information before it becomes public. Access to politicians before the laws are written. Access to opportunities that never appear on any stock exchange. They move through the world with a different set of rules, protected by layers of privacy, legal firewalls, and armies of advisors. Their children attend the same elite schools, vacation on the same private islands, and marry into the same handful of families, ensuring that power never strays far from its source. Take, for example, the story of a young financier invited to his first meeting at a private club in Zurich. He's nervous, knowing that every handshake in this room could change his life. Around him are men and women whose signatures can move markets, whose phone calls can open doors in any capital city. The conversation is casual talk of art, philanthropy, and the latest scientific breakthroughs. But beneath the surface, alliances are being forged, deals are being made, and the future is being quietly negotiated. These are the main characters of our story, not just individuals, but families, networks, and clubs. They are ambitious, often brilliant, but also deeply human. They worry about legacy, about betrayal, about the dangers of too much attention. Some are haunted by the fear of losing everything. Others are driven by the thrill of winning at a game only a few can play. In their world, trust is rare, loyalty is priceless, and the stakes are nothing less than the fate of nations. The world changed forever on a cold spring day in 1954, when a select group of politicians, bankers, and industrialists gathered at the Hotel de Bilderberg in the Netherlands. The meeting was so secret that even the hotel staff were kept in the dark about the guest list. No journalists were allowed, no minutes were taken, and no official record was ever released. Yet, what happened in that room would echo through the decades. This was the birth of the Bilderberg Group, a club so exclusive that its very existence would become the subject of endless speculation and conspiracy theories. The stated goal was simple: to foster dialogue between Europe and North America in the wake of World War II. But the real agenda was far more ambitious. Here, the world's most powerful people could speak freely, away from the glare of the public and the constraints of democracy. They could share intelligence, coordinate strategies, and, above all, build trust across borders and industries. The first meeting set a precedent. Invitations were extended only to those deemed essential to the future of the Western world: prime ministers, central bankers, CEOs of multinational corporations, and a handful of journalists sworn to secrecy. Over the years, the guest list would read like a who's who of global power: Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, Bill Clinton, and even future kings and presidents. Deals were struck, alliances were formed, and the seeds of future policies were quietly planted. For the first time, the world's financial and political elite had a private forum to shape the direction of the global economy. The rules were clear: nothing said inside could be attributed outside. This Chatham House rule created an environment where candor was rewarded and secrets were safe. The result? A new era of coordinated action on interest rates, trade agreements, and even military interventions. The first Bilderberg meeting was more than just a gathering. It was a turning point, a moment when the world's money and power began to move in lockstep, guided by a handful of people who understood that true influence is wielded in the shadows, not the spotlight. As the decades rolled on, the secret billionaire clubs faced challenges that threatened to unravel their carefully woven web of influence. The world was changing faster, louder, and more unpredictable than ever before. The oil shocks of the 1970 seconds sent markets into chaos, and the collapse of the Bretton Woods system shattered the illusion of stable currencies. Suddenly, even the most exclusive clubs found themselves scrambling to adapt, Inside the mahogany-paneled rooms of the Trilateral Commission, another elite club founded in 1973, the mood was tense. American, European, and Japanese power brokers debated how to respond to the rise of OPEC, the threat of stagflation, and the growing unrest on the streets. For the first time, the old guard realized that their grip on the world's money was not unbreakable. New players were emerging: petrostates, flush with oil wealth, Asian conglomerates rising from the ashes of war, and a new breed of activist investors who cared little for tradition. The stakes escalated with each crisis. In the 1980 seconds, the Latin American debt crisis threatened to topple entire economies. Behind closed doors, billionaire bankers and IMF officials negotiated bailouts that would save some nations and doom others. The decisions were made in private, but the consequences rippled through millions of lives: lost jobs, shuttered factories, and shattered dreams. Even within the clubs themselves, conflict simmered. Old money clashed with new tech wealth. European aristocrats eyed Silicon Valley disruptors with suspicion, while hedge fund titans plotted to outmaneuver the very institutions that once set the rules. Trust, always fragile, was tested by betrayals and leaks. The fear of exposure grew as investigative journalists and whistleblowers began to shine a light on offshore accounts, tax havens, and secret meetings. Yet, with every challenge, the clubs adapted. They tightened their circles, upgraded their security, and found new ways to stay ahead. The world outside grew more chaotic, but inside these rooms, the game continued: higher stakes, fewer players, and ever more secrecy. And as each crisis passed, the clubs emerged not weaker, but stronger, their influence more deeply entrenched than ever. The world held its breath in 2008. Stock markets crashed, banks failed, and ordinary people lost their homes, jobs, and savings. It was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, and for a moment, it seemed as if the entire system might collapse. On television, politicians promised reform and accountability. But behind the scenes, the real drama was unfolding in private conference rooms and secure video calls, far from the cameras, far from the public's reach. In New York, the heads of the world's largest banks gathered at the Federal Reserve, summoned by the U.S. Treasury Secretary, a former Wall Street insider himself. The stakes were existential. If the wrong bank failed, the entire global financial system could unravel in days. The atmosphere was electric, tense, and desperate. Billionaires, central bankers, and government officials argued late into the night, weighing the fate of Lehman Brothers, the future of AIG, and the survival of the world's largest insurance and investment firms. It was here, in these secret meetings, that the rules of the game were rewritten. Trillions of dollars in emergency loans and bailouts were arranged with a few signatures. The world's most powerful clubs, old banking dynasties, new tech billionaires, and sovereign wealth funds came together, not out of charity, but out of self-preservation. They knew that if the system fell, their fortunes would fall with it. The climax was not a single moment, but a series of high-stakes decisions made in rapid succession. Some players won big, buying distressed assets for pennies on the dollar, consolidating power and emerging from the crisis richer than ever. Others lost everything, their empires wiped out in a matter of weeks. For the public, the aftermath was years of austerity, lost opportunities, and growing resentment. For the clubs, it was proof that, even in the face of disaster, those with access, information, and influence could bend the world to their will. The 2008 crisis was a test, and the secret billionaire clubs passed. They had not just survived, they had shaped the outcome, ensuring that once again, the world's money would flow through their hands. When the dust settled after the 2008 financial crisis, the world was forever changed. Millions of people lost their homes, their jobs, and their faith in the system. Protests erupted from Wall Street to Athens, and the word inequality became a rallying cry for a new generation. Governments promised reform, but the real winners were already counting their gains behind closed doors. The secret billionaire clubs had not only survived, they had consolidated their power. Banks deemed too big to fail became even bigger. Mergers and acquisitions, orchestrated in private, created financial giants with more influence than most countries. The same names, old banking families, new tech titans, and global investors appeared on the boards of the world's most important institutions. The clubs had learned from the crisis. They became more discreet, more global, and more interconnected than ever before. But the consequences were not just economic. The crisis shattered trust in traditional institutions, governments, regulators, even democracy itself. Populist movements surged, fueled by anger at a system that seemed rigged for the few. Conspiracy theories flourished, some wild, some uncomfortably close to the truth. The idea that a handful of people could control the world's money no longer seemed far-fetched, it felt like common sense. Inside the clubs, the mood was cautious. The old rules of secrecy and loyalty were tested as new threats emerged. Cyber attacks, data leaks, and a new breed of activists determined to expose the hidden networks of power. Some members worried that the next crisis would be harder to contain, that the public's patience was wearing thin. Others doubled down, investing in new technologies, new markets, and new ways to keep their influence hidden. The aftermath of the crisis was a paradox. The world outside grew more divided, more suspicious, and more unstable. But inside the secret clubs, the game continued more complex, more dangerous, and more essential than ever. The price of power was higher, but so were the rewards. And as always, the fate of billions rested on decisions made in rooms most people would never see. Today, the influence of secret billionaire clubs is more relevant and more controversial than ever. In an age of instant information, social media, and global activism, you might think that secrecy is impossible. Yet, the world's most powerful networks have simply adapted. The annual gatherings at Davos, the closed-door sessions at Bilderberg, and the invitation-only retreats in Aspen or Street Moritz are now joined by encrypted group chats, private jets, and digital fortresses. The faces may change. Tech moguls, crypto kings, and data billionaires now sit alongside old banking dynasties. But the game remains the same. Consider the rise of family offices, private investment firms that manage the fortunes of the ultra-wealthy, often with more assets than national banks. These offices operate in near total secrecy, moving billions across borders, buying up real estate, startups, and even entire industries. Their decisions shape the price of your home, the fate of your job, and the direction of entire economies, yet their names rarely appear in the news. Or, look at the explosion of sovereign wealth funds, controlled by royal families and autocrats, investing trillions in everything from Silicon Valley unicorns to London skyscrapers. These funds are not just about profit. They are tools of influence, diplomacy, and sometimes quiet coercion. When a crisis hits, it's these networks that decide which companies are saved, which currencies are propped up, and which governments get a lifeline. For you, the viewer, the relevance is personal. Every time you see a sudden market crash, a mysterious bailout, or a new billionaire on the cover of a magazine, ask yourself, who really benefits? Who was in the room when the decision was made? The world's money is not just numbers on a screen, it's power, and that power is wielded by people who understand the rules of the game better than anyone else. If you had access to these rooms, what choices would you make? Would you protect your own, or try to change the system? The story of the secret billionaire clubs is not just history, it's the blueprint for the world we live in now and the world we'll inherit tomorrow. In a world where knowledge is power and access is everything, the difference between being on the inside or left in the dark often comes down to what you know and how quickly you can learn. The secret billionaire clubs have always thrived on information, the right data, the right connections, the right strategies at the right time. But you don't need a private jet or a family fortune to start thinking like the world's elite. You just need the right tools. That's why platforms like Brilliant.org are so valuable in today's world. Brilliant isn't just another online course, it's a gateway to the kind of critical thinking, problem solving, and strategic insight that the world's most powerful people use every day. Whether you're interested in finance, data science, artificial intelligence, or just want to sharpen your logic, Brilliant's interactive lessons are designed to help you see patterns, make connections, and think several moves ahead. Imagine being able to break down complex problems the way a hedge fund manager analyzes markets, or a tech billionaire evaluates a new investment. With Brilliant, you can practice the same skills at your own pace, from anywhere in the world. The lessons are hands-on, engaging, and proven to help you learn faster and remember more. It's not about memorizing facts. It's about learning how to think, adapt, and outsmart the competition. The world's secret clubs may have centuries of tradition and networks of influence, but the next generation of leaders will be those who can learn, adapt, and innovate faster than anyone else. If you want to understand the game and maybe even change it, start by investing in yourself. Visit brilliant.org/your channel or click the link in the description for a free 30-day trial. The first 200 viewers will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Because in a world run by secrets, the smartest move you can make is to never stop learning. So, as the lights dim in the world's most exclusive boardrooms and the last toast is made in a private club overlooking the city, the real question lingers. What does it mean to live in a world where so much power is concentrated in so few hands? The secret billionaire clubs are not just relics of the past or the stuff of late-night conspiracy theories. They are living, breathing networks, evolving with every new technology, every market crash, every political upheaval. Their influence is woven into the fabric of our daily lives, often invisible, but always present. Maybe you feel a sense of awe, or maybe it's frustration. Maybe you wonder if the game is rigged or if there's a way to change the rules. The truth is, the world has always been shaped by those who understand how to build alliances, keep secrets, and act when the moment is right. But history also shows that every system, no matter how powerful, is vulnerable to change from within or without. Revolutions have started with a single idea, a single voice, a single act of courage. So, what would you do if you had a seat at the table? Would you protect your own interests? Or would you try to open the doors for others? Would you keep the secrets? Or would you shine a light on the hidden deals and silent handshakes? The future isn't written yet. The next chapter could be shaped by anyone who's willing to learn, to question, and to act. If you found this story eye-opening, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe these secret clubs really control the world's money? What would you do if you had their power? And if you want to see more untold stories about the hidden forces shaping our world, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Next time, we'll dive even deeper into the shadowy world of offshore finance, where fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye. Until then, remember, the real game is always played behind closed doors.